Once upon a time, there was a beautiful palace. It wasn't an ordinary palace. It wasn't a human palace. It was a palace den, a kingdom where rabbits lived, where they were safe and out of the eye of hunters and humans. They built this little palace for themselves, out of the trees and the resources that they had available to them from the forest, their home. The palace was filled with wonders, and there were so many different stories to tell, and it stretched as far as the eye could see, and there was so much space that the bunnies, the rabbits could just run at their heart's content. And so they lived here in total peace, tranquility, a lot of families stuck together, some went off on their own, but everyone generally stayed inside of the palace. In one specific family, this is where we meet our main character, in Tuberville. She lived in a den with her mom and dad. The father rabbit was always going out and working hard and harvesting for his family. He used to take his wife with him, and they were just a perfect couple. They knew each other since they were little, and they would always come back with each other to meet. The father, Roger, and his wife, Rena, had 4 babies that were still with them. 2 boys, Wilbur and Justin, and 2 girls, Penny and Cassidy. Cassidy being our main character. Cassidy always loved to sit down in the middle of the forest because there were just so many wonderful sights. She always saw that the deer were very pretty and amazed at how high they could jump. She used to ask her parents if they were related to the deer because they pretty much acted the same. Her parents would amuse her until she was old enough to be completely annoying, and the parents would say, no, of course, we're completely 2 different animals. Cassidy and her sister were harvesting together, and as Penny sat down, they waited for their brothers to leave. As Penny sat down next to Cassidy, she said with her beautiful bright blue eyes, she said, you know, there's this guy that I like. Of course, Cassidy was like, who do you like? And she was like, Tumble. I like Tumble. Cassidy kept the smile on her face, but in fact, she was really terrified because her parents, especially her father, had told her to stay away from Tumble. Tumble was bad news. Penny didn't want to say anything else because she knew that their parents did not allow it. And at that moment, Cassidy looked over and indeed saw Tumble. Tumble hopped over and he basically looked at her sister and was like, hey, what's going on, Penny? Penny started playing with her ears and she beat her back legs on the ground, and she was just over the moon about Tumble coming to talk to her, and she just pretended she played it off like she wasn't really interested, but she was in fact very interested. And Tumble would always hang around these other rabbits that were much stronger, these male rabbits. A lot of them were solid colored, black rabbits, white rabbits, these yellow type of rabbits that were just really cool to look at. Everyone loved them. Every male rabbit in the community wanted to be these guys, and they would actually travel outside of the kingdom of the rabbits, specifically even Tuberville. This is what Penny loved about Tumble. She would always ask him questions like, what is it like out there? He would love the fact that she was so into him, and he would say, you know, it's no joke. It takes a very strong rabbit to go out there and survive, and I think it makes us stronger to prove ourselves that we can be protectors of Tuberville. We go out there and just test our mettle. Maybe one day you should come. By now, Cassidy is just, her ears are hanging back and she's just looking from her sister to Tumble, and she's just like, is she gonna seriously say yes? Please don't, because I know you know better. And much to her chagrin, her sister's like, yeah, I think I got what it takes. Tumble is like, really? Yeah? And he has this really suave voice. He's hopping around her and just touching her with his paws. Like, he's doing the little things that he knows what he's doing. Cassidy is a little bit jealous, but she's also worried about her sister because this guy hangs around with people who their parents think are bad influences. She doesn't want to say anything because she doesn't want to embarrass her. And so Tumble takes his leave. Just as Tumble is leaving, he's like, all right, Penny, I'll catch you later. In comes Justin and Wilbur, and they're like, okay, what was that? Justin was just looking at this other handsome, fluffier rabbit that was walking by after having just talked to one of his sisters. Wilbur is more of the scrappy person. He's like, what the frick was that? Why was he over here? Penny just ignores him. She's like, oh, please, stop. Wilbur is not having it. He's like, dude, you should not be hanging out with Tumble. To which Penny replies, don't tell me what to do. I'm old enough, I can do whatever I want. And they start arguing back and forth. He basically tells her, look, I don't care, but him specifically, you're gonna bring ruin to her family. And she's like, all right, fine, I'll bring ruin to the family then. It is what it is. I'm having his babies one way or another. This is something that both brothers did not want to hear. That night, after the father came home, Cassidy was in her part of their den, her room, basically, and she she was chewing on some of the seeds that they had brought in and some of the harvest, and she heard this commotion and a lot of thumping noises, like 2 adult rabbits were thumping their feet really loud, which means they were very angry. So Penny walked into the room and she's like, do you hear that? Cassidy's like, yeah, I think Mom and Dad are fighting. Penny says, I'm gonna go and check it out. Cassidy tells her, no, you should probably stay here. So after Penny agrees, they just sit and listen. By now, Wilbur and Justin were out of the house. They spent most of their time out of the house anyway because they worked overtime. So it was mostly just the girls inside the house. And after, they heard their father yell something towards their mother and then just leave. So the 2 girls, Penny and Cassidy, went over to their mom to basically inquire what was going on. Cassidy and Penny are like, Mom, are you okay? Their mother is just like, oh yeah, I'm fine, but it's clear that she's upset. So they asked their mother what happened with their dad, and she's just like, look, your dad and I just having some issues. It's nothing. We fight sometimes. But all the kids did notice that after some time, they just would fight more and more. And their father would spend more time away from the house. Penny would take this opportunity to hang around with Tumble. And there was one point in time when Wilbur did not like the fact that Tumble kept coming over, especially in the middle of when their family was having problems. So he actually fought Tumble. He charged after him and started biting his neck. Tumble was scratching him. The both of them were scratching and biting, and they would tumble over each other in the grass and start kicking each other with their hind legs. But Tumble was much fluffier, so the bites that Wilbur was delivering just didn't feel like they were connecting. Tumble took a chunk out of Wilbur's ear. He also used his very powerful hind legs that were much stronger than Wilbur's and kicked him several feet away, and Wilbur connected with a rock. It was an accident, and everyone had gathered around. All the different rabbits had gathered around and seen that it was an accident, and Tumble was trying to defend himself. Wilbur was very angry, and as he tried to get up on his 4 legs to be like, you asshole, you know, yada yada yada, and yell some expletives at Tumble, he realized that his back legs couldn't move. He was walking forward and fell, and he was like, why can't I feel my back legs? Apparently, the push that Tumble dealt him when he hit on the rock hurt his back so badly that it made Wilbur crippled, and he would never walk again, at least not being able to use his back legs. The father would find out about this, and he was just furious. This is just extra stuff that they had to worry about, and the kids found out through their parents arguing and hearing them that something was going on with Tuberville and the whole kingdom of rabbits. Like, there was a lot of resources that were rarer than they used to be. It's not as easy to come by as they used to be. Their little small kingdom was being drained. One night, when Penny snuck inside, Cassidy saw her and was very angry. And she basically asked her sister, like, how could you still be with Tumble after what he did to Wilbur? Penny replied saying, it's not his fault. Wilbur attacked him first. Penny, but he's your brother, and he's crippled now because of him, and you're still with him. Yeah, and I'm still gonna be with him. I didn't ask Wilbur to go and fight him for no reason. Wilbur treated me like I'm an infant. I am not. He did that to himself, not Tumble. This kind of put a strain in Cassidy and Penny's relationship. And when Penny and Cassidy were finished arguing, Cassidy told her, hey, Mom has been crying. We need to go and check out what's wrong with her. Their mom was just so stressed. Her hair was falling out. It was awful for her. And when they asked her what was wrong, she told them that the father had left for good. He went to some other woodland area. He would not be coming back to Tuberville. More and more rabbits were leaving the area, and Cassie and her family realized this. Justin had built a little handicap thing for his brother to put on his back end so that Wilbur would be able to use his front legs to hop along, but it just felt so unnatural. The wheels would buck into his front legs. It was very uncomfortable, and Wilbur just lost his temper at everything. His family, his sisters, even his mom. And there was a period in time when his mom was trying to help him and feed him, and he attacked her and bit her on the side of her face. She, in turn, scratched him across his face, and the both of them were crying. At the time Cassidy was home, she went in between them and broke up the fight, and so did Justin. Wilbur had tried going out and talking to some females, but everyone just felt so much pity for him. He said, who am I as a rabbit if I don't have my back legs? One day, he left Tuberville and never came back. There were rumors that he had gone out beyond Tuberville, and a hawk had gotten him. There was no proof of this, nor would there be. This devastated their mother even more. For a while, everything was depressing. Cassidy tried everything in her power to make her mom happy, but she was always sad. When she had gone over to Tumbler's den, she confronted her sister, Penny, and was asking, why are you leaving all the chores on me? Mom needs us. Cassidy was very angry with her. It was like, you need to come home now. Penny replied by saying, no. Tumble is my family now, and Mom has given up. She doesn't care about us. She doesn't care about taking care of the den. It's hella depressing over there. I don't want to stay over there. Cassidy was very angry and thought of it as very selfish. But after she was the only one left in the house with her mom always saying how she wished not to live anymore and all she cared about was Roger and how she wanted him to come home, Cassidy, not being able to do anything to help her mom but console her, started to get depressed herself. And so, she would spend most of her time outside of the den, just making friends with other rabbits. She would find Justin, who was very worried because his brother had been missing for so long and he feared the worst. All of them thought that Wilbur certainly was dead. When Cassie would sit down with Justin, she asked him, how are you doing with, losing Wilbur, with Mom and everything? And Justin replied to her and said, look, I've been hearing so many things about the resources depleting. We need to work overtime, but there's just not enough to harvest. At some point, Tuberville, I feel like, is going to run out of resources. We're at the point right now where, because of our population size and the resources that are being taken away, that we're actually using up more than we can replenish, more than can be replenished. The only thing is for us to go outside. Cassidy was very dismayed to hear this because it basically meant that Tumble was right. Penny was living her best life. She had all the nice things, perfectly soft bedding, and Cassidy was like, you look really nice, your fur looks polished, what's going on? Penny was over the moon. She asked kind of lackadaisically, how's Mom doing? To which Cassidy replied, she's, Mom. Penny took her by her front paws and her hind legs were just flipping around. She was so happy. She started jumping circles around her sister and she said, Cassidy, you need to come here, please. So Penny took her inside of Tumble's house. Tumble had just come home and he looked Cassidy up and down. He said, oh, I never thought I'd see the day when you would come to my den. Cassidy narrowed her eyes and replied, don't get used to it. Tumble wiggled his ears and he said, please make yourself at home. Penny was just looking at him dreamily as if he was the best thing ever. She told Cassidy all these awesome things about Tumble and his adventures. Every day was a new adventure for him, and every day he would carry back all these valuable things. So she went to her section in Tumble's den, and when Cassidy saw it, she was surprised. When Cassidy saw Penny's den, it was just breathtaking. And there was a mini rabbit sitting on one end of her little room. It scared the crap out of Cassidy because she didn't know what it was. The little rabbit said, I apologize. I'm here to greet the guest and ask you if you'd like anything. I can go out and harvest for you. Cassidy started laughing and she nuzzled her sister and she's like, who does things for you? She's like, yeah, girl, I haven't had to harvest in a while now. Can't you tell? Look at my paws. And she wiggled her front paws in front of her sister. The way that Penny was living, Cassidy honestly was very envious. When she was getting ready to leave, Tumble went in front of her and said, before you go, I want to let you know that you're free to come here anytime you'd like. He had that nice felt voice that Cassidy didn't realize she liked so much until she was right in front of him. There was something about being in front of this male rabbit up close and personal that made her feel weak all over. She had to remind herself that this was her sister's male. But Cassidy had responsibility, so she did go back home, and of course there was a dark cloud over the den where her mom was just constantly depressed. She did encourage her mom to try and go out and do other things, but maybe they were also in want. Justin had been home and he had brought back some extra things, but he looked really sad, and when Cassidy asked him what was wrong, Justin turned to her and his ears were just hanging in an airplane pose, and he looked up at her with sad eyes and he's like, I love you, Cassidy, I love Mom, but we're gonna have to leave Tuberville. We can't stay here. It's just really bad. People are leaving in droves, and while that is helpful because the population's a little bit smaller now, the resources and the dangers are just increasing. Cassidy thought this was stupid, and she pretty much asked him as much, like, okay, so you want to go out there where there's more danger? But Justin assured her that, look, at least there's danger out there, but there is more resources, as opposed to it becoming more dangerous here with less resources. Justin would hug his mom and then leave. After a while, Cassidy would hug her mom and say, Mom, I'm right across the street if you need me. I'm gonna be staying with Penny for a while. Penny loved staying with her sister. She was very happy and she became pregnant. Tumble was so happy. He was like, I'm gonna make a great father, but we are going to have to eventually go out and leave Tuberville, and he told them this. So many months later, Tumble would take his family out of Tuberville. While Penny had still been pregnant before she had Wingdale, their son, Cassidy and Tumble had to brave the wild. There were situations that Cassidy found herself in that she'd never before. She never had to worry about her safety before, and several creatures tried to eat them. By now, Penny was used to coming out with Tumble, but he pretty much protected her all the time. There were times when Tumble had to fight other rabbits off. There was one time where he fought a pack of 5 rabbits because he was going through their territory and they had claimed it recently. They didn't mess with him again. He got lots of scars and chunks of his fur were taken out, but he protected his family. By the time they had their son, they had arrived in the new area. As Wingdale got older, he grew into his looks and looked more like his father. He wasn't rough and tumble like his father, and was actually more like his mom. They settled down in the new area. The place was called Saxoville, and there was so much vegetation and blooming flowers everywhere. There was more food than the rabbits ever expected to have. It wasn't as developed as Tuberville, but it certainly had the potential. In one particular part of the forest, this is where Tumble had frequented, and he decided that this was where they were going to make their permanent den. He already had a temporary den here, so he told Penny, after whispering sweet nothings into her ear and them nuzzling each other's noses, that this is where they would raise their family. Penny already had her den decorated by her servant, and Cassidy did as well, and she felt like royalty. Tumble worked so hard to make sure that his female and his child were completely comfortable, and again, after he dropped them off, he had gone out and brought back a few resources. Everything was lovely. Penny would spend most of her days playing with her son. She was so happy that Wingdale was in her life, she let him get away with so much. Cassidy was also happy to be part of the family, and one day she asked Penny, how's mom doing? Well, mom made her decision to stay in Tuberville, so it is what it is. One day, Tumble decided to go out, and Cassidy asked him, hey, are you going towards Tuberville? I'd like to go there and see how mom is doing. Tumble was like, I thought you'd never ask. And he was being super nice to Cassidy. So they went together, and a few of his other people were there as well, these other male rabbits. Cassidy did not like the way that they were looking at her. They always felt so predatory. Everything seemed fine, and Tumble basically told her, look, you need to keep up with me. I was going slow before, but it is high season for predators, so you need to make sure that you stay close. Cassidy tried to do this, but the more she tried to stay close to Tumble, as he broke out into a full run, she realized she was not as fast as him. He definitely had a lot more fitness than she did. So because she was all scrawny and just didn't have the musculature or the endurance that he had, she fell behind. And then she heard this noise. A very strange noise in the distance. She could hear Tumble's voice coming from the other direction, and so she decided to follow it. But the noise from behind her just kept getting louder and louder, and she kept wondering, what is that noise? So when she could finally hear Tumble, he was screaming at her. Run to me, run to me, run to me, Cassidy, hurry, run! Don't go back towards the den, just run straight to me. Cassidy was so confused, but she's never heard Tumble act like that ever. This guy is not afraid of anything, but clearly he was afraid. So she was terrified, and she ran to him as fast as she could. In the distance, these large creature with floppy ears and 4 muscular legs came bounding towards her with this loud noise, and then she realized those things are what was making the noise. They were running so fast, she couldn't process, her brain couldn't process just how or when they would get to her, and the faster she ran is the more she came, and is the more that they came after her, and the faster they seemed to get. And she also saw a really horrific sight. Behind them, these creatures with 4 legs that were making these loud honking noises were these trees that were moving. And to her, that's what it looked like. These trees without leaves that were moving. And she was horrified. She's never seen anything like this. Imagine seeing these alien entities, these creatures you've never seen before, in trees that you know are not supposed to be walking, coming straight towards you. It was freaking frightening. Cassidy just knew she was not going to be fast enough. The things were coming straight to her. They were too fast. She was not going to make it, and she didn't know what was going to happen, but she had a really bad feeling that she was going to get hurt or worse if they caught up to her. She started crying when she could feel the hot breath of that beast behind her until she saw a yellow blur, and something was running circles around her and the beast, which gave her time to go away. It was Tumble. He had saved her life, and because he was so fast, he was running circles around them, and these things would not be able to catch him. He told her her, you know what, just go to Tuberville, and she wanted to go back home. He said, no, they know your smell now. If they will track you until you're dead, you have to take a specific path to offset the predators before you go back to your lair, and my son is there. We cannot go back there. You need to go to Tuberville. So just keep running until you get to Tuberville. Cassidy was scared because at this point, she was so far out from Tuberville, she honestly didn't remember which way was the way to Tuberville. But she tried to use her instinct. She stuck her nose in the air and her ears, and she ran as fast as she could. But she got lost. Tumble was still back there, and she's thinking to herself, okay, he's making a noise, and he's saying, come on, dogs, come on, dogs. And after a while, he squealed, and she did not hear anything else, and she feared the worst. She got lost in a very dark forest, and she was nowhere near Tuberville. To her dismay, she was lost. The rain had been falling for a while, and Cassidy was completely wet. She was drenched in water, and there was nowhere for her to go. She was scared. She was waiting for a while, thinking that Tumble would catch up to her eventually, and then after the baying noises of those creatures died down that Tumble was calling dogs, she went out into the clearing again to inquire where Tumble was. She kept calling for him, and she was wondering where his friends were too. Maybe they had gone to help him. Now, the good news is she did see someone. The bad news is it wasn't Tumble. Further bad news is it was the 4 other male rabbits that were his friends, the ones that were just looking around the area, and it seems as though they were looking for her. Maybe Tumble sent them, but something just didn't feel right about those male rabbits, and as she saw them, she perked up and they saw her, and they were like, hey, come on out here, it's okay. She asked them, where's Tumble? Oh, he's fine. She just didn't like the way they were acting, and as she ran back into the forest, she looked back and to her horror saw them breaking to a run after her. She just knew something bad was going to happen. These 4 male rabbits, they have a very bad reputation, especially when it came to violating females. So she decided, you know what, they might end up killing me. I just have a bad feeling about this. So she ran deeper into the forest, and there was some threshold in the forest that when she passed it and got to a certain point, they stopped and they were calling out for her, and she kept wondering, why are they not coming further? So she looked at them and they looked at her and they're like, all right, whatever, good luck. And they left, and she thought it was a trick, so she just kept running further and waiting for Tumble, and it turns out that she was just in a bad way. This was a very scary forest. It was a very scary situation if she's in an area where those rabbits don't want to go. As she walked around this forest, she just felt so lonely until she heard rustling and growling. It sounded like those baying beasts that were trying to get her from before. She had nowhere to hide, there was no den, so she went under the stump of a tree and she heard the sniffing noise of something big coming towards her, and she closed her eyes and pasted herself all the way on the other end of the base of this tree that kind of looked like a little cave because there was a hole at the base of it, and just hoping and praying that whatever it was could not reach her. And then something with its wet feet stopped right in front of the base, and she saw these glowing eyes slowly lower themselves to look inside the hole where she was, and she just screamed and kicked, and she had nowhere else to go. She tried climbing up the tree, but there was nowhere for her to go, until the voice spoke to her and said, hey, relax, I'm not gonna hurt you. Were you okay? You're acting insane. When she opened her eyes and broke out of the franticness, she saw a raccoon staring back at her. He said, hello, my name is Tyre. And she was so relieved, but also kind of wary because she's heard things about raccoons. And she said, hi, I'm sorry I freaked out, but I don't know who you are. Kindly please step away from me. The raccoon chuckled and played with his ears a little bit. He looked up into the night sky, and she was wondering, how is he so comfortable being out there in the dark, out in the open? And he said to her, I would love to get away from you, but there's one little problem. You're kind of in my house, so, you know. She felt so embarrassed, and she apologized profusely and said that she would leave, but then she realized that if she were to leave, she would be out there, and she asked him if he saw 4 other rabbits, and he said, no, not by this way. I mean, there's lots of rabbits around, but usually they're not out around this time. They're out at night, but they're usually around their den, or in the greener areas where they can graze at night, so no, you're fine. if that's what you were wondering. So she said, well, I know this is gonna sound weird, but can I stay with you, please? I'm really scared, and my friend, I don't know if he's coming. I'm trying to find my way to Tuberville. He says, Tuberville. She says, yes, and she started describing it to him, and he says, oh, you mean that rabbit kingdom that the hunters started setting fire to? Okay, yeah, I mean, I don't know why you'd want to go back there. It's like open season over there, but sure. She didn't know what he was talking about until he explained it to her, and now she understood why the resources were being used up. Said, yeah, a lot of people are building in that area. It's actually good for me and my family because humans is what these things are called. They leave behind free food and we don't have to work as much. So it's really advantageous for a lot of mother raccoons. As a matter of fact, he was raised on human civilization. He hardly ever had to hunt for his meals. And she couldn't understand that something that was the undoing of her family was so beneficial to his. So she said, okay, well, that's nice. So can I stay with you? He said, sure. I will do you one better. I will take you there myself in the morning. And so she cozied up to him underneath that hole. And that night it was very awkward because she was sitting next to him, and because he's so big, he basically almost takes up the entire enclosure at the base of the tree, and she was just resting up next to him, and he was very fluffy, but underneath all the fluff, she could feel this muscle, and she was like, what the frick is wrong with me? Like, he feels great, and she remarked and said, you're very warm, and he said, yeah, you too. And this weird kind of silence just fell over them. It was freaking strange. But then the morning came up and he woke her up and he said, hey, you ready to go? So she says, yes, I'm ready to go. And he's like, I brought you some breakfast. And she was like, when did you? He's like, yeah, after you fell asleep, I kind of went back out because it's usually the time that I go hunting and scavenging anyway. I just didn't want to disturb you. But yeah, I was out hunting most of the night and I got some food. A lot of the stuff that he put down in front of her, she really didn't like, but there was some like rotting fruit, sort of, but pieces of it were still good, and she ate that. And then they headed over to Tuberville. He and Cassidy really got to know each other, and one of his friends had stopped by. The friend was a female crow, and the female crow's name was Matthias. She was the one that told him where all the good stuff was. Cassidy was terrified. She did not have a good rapport with birds. Birds, as a matter of fact, in Tuberville and how she grew up, were seen as enemies, especially crows that would regularly try to steal, kidnap, and eat rabbit babies. So she was very angry, and she and Matthias almost started fighting. And Matthias was like, look, relax. I'm not gonna hurt you. Cassidy was angry and she's like, yeah, you'll just kill one of my kind or our babies. Matthias was like, yeah, if I have to. I mean, it's not personal, but if you're not taking care of them well enough, nature is scary and all that shit. This made Cassidy feel very angry, but after a while of hearing her have banter back and forth with Tyre, she started to warm up to the bird a little bit, but only a tiny bit. Only because Tyre, like the bird, they were having these banters back and forth, and they just seemed like an old married couple the way they were talking back and forth. Matthias said, yeah, me and Tyre have been friends for a very long time. He helps me find certain things, and he can open certain things that I can't open, and I can show him certain things that he can't see. So I tell him where to go. I'm his compass, and he's my hands. On their way to Tuberville, Cassie couldn't help but thinking about Penny and her son and whether or not Tumble was able to make it back. He seemed very experienced, so she believed that Tumble would be okay and just hoped that he would be okay. And eventually, they did reach to Tuberville. Okay, here you are, said Tyre as he dropped her off. He's like, do you, want me to wait for you, or are you gonna stay here? Cassidy said, no, I'm just checking up on my mom to see if she's okay. And Matthias, just trying to break the ice, said, look, I know you don't like me, but to try and be on good terms with you, I can do you a favor, and I can go back towards where you were and fly overhead and see if I find your friend Tumble. And this just warmed Cassidy's heart. She's like, yes, please, can you tell me if he's okay? She's like, yeah, I can do that. And Matthias flew away, and she told Tyre she'd see him later. Tyre was totally fine with that, and Tyre even asked, like, is that guy your boyfriend? Is your mate? So Cassidy said, no, he's actually my sister's mate. They have a son together. I moved in with them. We moved from there to Saxoville, and we were going to build it together. And honestly, if something happened to him, I'm really worried about my sister, that those 4 male rabbits are gonna go back there. They know where they live, and Tumble was the one kind of keeping them in check. And the more she started thinking about all these things, the more worried she got. Like, on one hand, she's worried about her mom. She's here now. She could check up on her. But she's also worried about Penny. So Tyre, for some strange reason, even to Cassidy, was like, you know what? This is an adventure. I love adventures. And you seem like a cool chick. I really would like to see that you go home safe. I mean, if Tumble was the one that was keeping you guys safe, you can't go there by yourself anyway, especially if those 4 rabbits are around. And I can tell you from experience, I know how to bust up a rabbit, especially 4 of them. That's nothing for me. And this made Cassidy feel good and made her feel safe. So she said, okay, you promise you'll wait here for me? He said, yes, I promise. So she went back to see if her mom was still there. And surely enough, her mom was still there. Her mom was so happy to see her, and she was actually in good spirits, even further than when she left. And she's like, oh, my daughter, how are you doing? What was even more exciting is that Justin was there with her. He had moved back in, and she hugged the both of them and were running circles around each other and just so happy. And Justin was like, oh my gosh, how is Penny? Is Penny with you? And she said, yes, Penny is with me. As a matter of fact, she has a child now, and you know, you're an uncle, and she's still with Tumble. Tumble actually saved me, and she told her everything that happened, told her brother and her mom everything that happened, and that Tyre was actually waiting outside. And rabbits in Tuberville are freaking racist. And when they heard that they had a coon outside of their little area, the both of them tensed up. They were like, the mother was like, you brought one here. How could you do that? That's so irresponsible of you. Why are you with one? You know he could just turn and kill you. Even the brother was like, what were you thinking, bro? Like, you need to go, you know, and get some of the other people to escort you back there, so you can bring Penny back home, especially if something happened to Tumble. Cassidy was like, look, I felt the same way you did, but Tyre, he stuck his neck out for me. He's actually going to help me. The mother and the brother did not feel too good about that. They thought that this raccoon's going to take her out into the wilderness and kill her, and Cassidy basically assured them. She said if he was going to do that, he would have done it last night. He would have done it between now and, I mean, come on. There were so many opportunities. He and the crow were actually really nice to me. I know they get a bad rap, but these specific individuals are not like that. And she called Tyre in and introduced him to her family. Justin and her mom immediately put their ears back, and they hit their hind legs on the floor very hard and just narrowed their eyes at this raccoon. He didn't think anything of it. He's like, look, I don't have any intention of hurting your daughter. I am really trying to help her. If you want to feel better, I can also bring you guys some food. I know that you rabbits like to harvest and stuff. I can bring you some extra food. They did not budge an inch at this, but the mother looked over to her daughter and completely ignored the raccoon with a smile on her face and was like, anyways, so honey, there's good news. There's a lot of resources because a lot of the rabbits went away from the area. It gave the area time to replenish. When Cassidy asked her about the hunters and all of that, she said, yeah, the hunters did come in the area, but Tuberville, this especially center Tuberville where we live, is actually so protected and hedged that the hunters didn't even come by here. Of course, we have to worry about their beasts from time to time, but it's pretty much still safe here. It's definitely much safer than where you are, and you should really come back and stay with us. Cassidy really thought about this, but she knows that Penny wouldn't leave. Justin, you know, when she was getting ready to leave, Justin, you know, pulled her aside into her old den and it's like, look, I'm very proud of you that, you know, you survived, but Tumble is not the kind of person you want to be with. I mean, look at what happened with Wilbur. I just don't feel safe for you being so far away from family. And Penny's an idiot. Cassidy smiled to herself and looked over in the main section of the den, which was basically their living room, and she wiggled her ears and then looked to her brother and said, well, I'm not alone. I have a friend now. Tyre was ready to go, and after Justin hugged his sister very tightly and was so happy to see her, the mother hugged her and she's like, please, if you can, whenever you get the chance, if it's safe, please bring my grandson. The mother was at an age right now where she wouldn't make that journey. It's just too much for her. And Tyre interjected and said, look, if you ever need to have an envoy to go over there, I can help you. That's really where I make my home. I know how to navigate humans very, very well. So Cassidy said, yeah, it's a good idea. And surprisingly, the mother actually kind of agreed to this in her own prejudiced sort of way. So after she said goodbye to her family, she hugged them again. It's like she didn't want to let them go. She decided to go with Tyre back towards Saxoville. On the way there, Tyre and Cassidy really bonded. Tyre was telling her about all these stories from when he was growing up, and she was just hanging on to every word, and she found herself so warm around him. he was so fun to be around, and she didn't feel like Tumble. Tumble had this sort of suave but kind of full of himself kind of thing where he knew he was handsome and he loved people being nervous in front of him. Tyre had this type of natural confidence that didn't require anything in return, and it seemed as though he genuinely loved helping people. And Tumble was like that too, but there was just something different about Tyre. He was way more humble than Tumble was. So then as they were approaching Saxoville and he was teaching her of all the things to avoid, what to look out for, how to lose dogs if you ever find them coming up close to you. I mean, she can't climb trees, so he told her of all these little entry points under certain trees where she could escape to. They were escape entry points that a lot of raccoons back in the day, the younger ones, had made so they had a place to go if they couldn't get up a tree very quickly. And she said she had no idea. So as they were continuing and they were almost at Saxoville, she asked him, like, you know, so where's your mate? Like, where's your family? And he smiled at her and kind of side-eyed her, and he's like, why are you asking if I have a mate? And she corrected herself and she's like, no, I meant like, why, where's your family? And he was teasing her and he was like, no, you asked me where's my mate? She started blushing so hard. She's like, why are you dying on that hill? And he's just like, you know, it's just a weird thing to ask, you know, just out of the blue, like, where's your mate? Like, you're trying to gather some information concerning that area. And Cassidy blushed so hard, and then he just nudged her and said, I'm just playing with you. But was he really? Cassidy actually found that she was with a raccoon, no less, kind of digging him, and it was freaking weird. And eventually they reached to Saxoville. Matthias had flown down to meet them, and she said, you know what, I actually went right past you guys for some reason, but yeah, Tumble is fine. He's been here. And they're like, what, really? Is he okay? Yeah, he's fine. He's with your sister. When Penny saw Cassidy, she cried. She bounded out and ran straight for her and hugged her tightly and was crying and bawling, and she thought that her sister was dead. Tumble had tried to save Cassidy, and she even tried to blame him and said, what did you do with my sister? You did something to her. But she was fine, and she was so happy. And when Cassidy told her that it was because of Tyre, the raccoon, Penny hugged him too. She did not have the same prejudice that her mom did, and was just so relieved. And she's like, if you would give your life to save my sister, then you're my friend. Tumble asked her, like, what had happened, and Cassidy told him, like, look, your friends, they chased me to the forest and they were gonna hurt me. And Tumble said no. He started shaking his head furiously. He's like, no, my friends were looking for you to take you back home. And Cassidy tried to convince him that no, I know what their intent was. He says, I know them more than you know, they wouldn't do that, especially, you know, with me in the picture. And she said they probably thought you were dead. They just, both of them were arguing back and forth, and it got Tumble in a really, really bad mood. Wingdale was also happy to see his aunt back, and for a while, everything was calmed down. Penny made sure that she fixed a nice meal for everyone, and she invited Tyre to stay over. Tumble did not like this. He pulled her aside and started arguing with her and was like, why would you invite him to stay in my house? This is my house. Penny was angry, and she said, I thought this was our house. To which he replied, you didn't get this house. You didn't protect this house. You didn't stock this house. I brought you here because you're carrying my child and because I care about you, but this is my house. You are my mate. You can't just make decisions without asking me first. That's very disrespectful, and to a raccoon, no less. Penny didn't see what the big deal was because Tyre brought home her sister. She was fine, but Tumble called her stupid and was like, dude, he could kill all of us. This could all be a ruse for him to kill all of us. We know that raccoons are very mysterious and cunning, and they will do shit just to play with your head. How can you not know that? Oh, of course you don't, because you haven't been surviving out here very long. It's only because of me, and if it weren't for me, you wouldn't be able to survive out here. Wingdale ran to his room, and he was very upset that his parents were fighting. Cassidy saw this as her mom and dad all over again, and she was terrified that Tumble would leave, because he was right. If he did end up leaving them, they would be at the predator's mercy. Tumble was the one who knew how to survive and to catch things. And though he was training his son, Wingdale was still too young to take on anything. Later, Cassidy would talk to Tyre about this. They actually talked a lot, but he spent most of his time outside. Tumble would not allow him inside the den. So when Penny made her little meal, she brought it outside to them and ate with them and had like a little picnic with them. Later, she would be caught smiling at her sister Cassidy. I know that face, big sister. Cassidy would ask her what's wrong, and she would basically tell her, yeah, I know that you have the hots for the raccoon. And hearing somebody else say this out loud made Cassidy cover her face face in shame and embarrassment. But Penny didn't care. She was such a free spirit that she was okay with it. She's like, look, you love who you love. It's not something you can control. You just love who you love. Cassidy hugged her and she was like, how would this ever work though? Like, we're different. We come from different cultures. Like, we can't even have babies. But Penny says, you know, you'll never know until you try. As Wingdale got older, he would spend more time outdoors. He wanted so much to be like his dad. The two of them actually looked so similar to each other. Tumble would teach his son how to fight, how to harvest, where to find food. And Wingdale would hang on to every word that his father said. One day, Wingdale would ask his dad, like, you know, why do you and mom fight so much? Tumble would say, well, sometimes we just have a difference in opinion and you just gotta be loud until the person hears you. And that was the only conversation that Wingdale ever had concerning arguing with his parents. Matthias would come to Saxoville or to their little area and tell them when she's found something. Cassidy would usually go on these little excursions with Tyre, and Tyre would love her company. And one day when they were out and it was getting darker, the fireflies were coming out, the leaves were falling, Tyre would turn to her and, you know, kind of bring her into him, and she would like it. And he would do these little things, like they always used to kind of flirt with each other and just joke around with each other, and they acted like best friends. And he would try to touch her to see what he could get away with, just shove her here, play with her ears there, and after a while, he bit the bullet and he basically gave her a side hug and said, well, I'm just trying to keep you warm. If you're not comfortable with this, whatever. And she was completely into it. And she said, Tyre, you know, do you like me? You know, even though I'm a rabbit? And he says, yeah, I like you. And she knew what he meant. She meant romantically, but she was afraid to say so. And he took her chin in his fingers and he said, yes, Cassidy, I really like you. And the both of them would kiss. And so they were sort of kind of a couple. As time went on, Penny got sadder. Tumble would spend more time away from home. His son would always ask his mother, you know, when's dad coming home? He's been gone for a few days. He started bringing less resources home and less. And when he did come home, he was always irritable. Penny would do everything to make him happy. She would hug him, she would groom him, she would play with his ears. And at first he was into it. She had to always throw herself at him to get them to mate. And before, every time he would come home, he would mate with her immediately. But he started getting tired of that, it seemed. Maybe he was too tired from all the hunting. Maybe he was getting older, but Penny just had a feeling that something was wrong, and she asked him, hey, Tumble, is everything okay? Everything's fine, he would reply. Stop asking me that, it's really annoying. And it's like no matter what Penny did, she would always find that he would just snap at her and just be very annoyed. He would come home, stay home for a few hours, eat whatever she made, and then go right back out. Of course, he was always nice to his boy. He would always, you know, pet him on his head, and they would play, like rough play a little bit the way rabbits do, and then he would leave. And whenever he would leave, Wingdale just felt so sad and lonely. He couldn't connect with his mom in the way that he could connect with his dad. So as soon as his dad left, he would look up at his mom with those pretty little eyes that looked just like his father's eyes and ask her, hey mom, when is dad coming back home? And she would just cry because she doesn't know what to tell him. She's like, every time he leaves, I don't know when he's coming back. So he asked, next time, can I go with him? And the next time the dad did come home, he asked him, hey, can I go with you? And Tumble would look at his son with his ears back and say, no, you can't go with me. And his son would throw a tantrum and just ask why. And Tumble says, because I said so. And the more that he told his son no, is the more that Wingdale just started flipping over, kicking things with his back legs. He was just making a mess of the den. And Tumble got very angry and basically assaulted his son, scratched him in the face, and kicked him and said, stop that shit, don't do that. To which Wingdale would angrily reply, why, I don't have to listen to you, you're not here anyway half the time, so how do I know if you're even my father? And that was a pull on their relationship, and Tumble felt horrible about this. But then it would be longer periods of time when he would just go away from home and not come back. And Penny actually took this out on her son and said, why did you have to say that to him? As if it was everybody else's fault as well as hers that Tumble was leaving it. Tumble had to be taken care of. Cassidy and Tyre were in love. They were having so much fun just hanging out with each other, and the both of them are very nervous because even though they were a couple, they haven't mated yet, and they were just wondering, well, how, you know, would I hurt her as a raccoon? I don't know. And it was that tension and that longing between them that made their relationship so passionate. Matthias recognized this, and she thought it was cute but annoying. And Penny loved this about her sister, and she was happy for her, but then she found herself being envious. And she came out one day to have a picnic with them, and she was very sad. The once beautiful, vibrant, free-spirited Penny was now always depressed. This saddened Cassidy because it reminded her of her mom, and she asked Penny what was wrong. And Penny told her everything, like what was happening with Tumble, where he was going. So Tyre interjected and is like, don't you wonder where he goes? And she says, I guess he's looking for food, but there's so much food and he hardly brings anything back. Matthias knew exactly what was going on. She was like, yeah, you don't see something wrong with that girl? She's like, listen, we're your friends. And she went down on the ground and put her wing over the sad rabbit and said, we are going to find out this mystery for you, because he is a father and he's your mate and he's supposed to be taking care of you, and he's not doing that. He brought you all the way out here and he's not taking care of you. The least that he could do is tell you where he's going or where he is, and we can find that out for you. Penny was kind of weirded out by this. She always valued Tumble's privacy. That was something that they said when they became official, like, listen, don't ask me about my job, just let me do what I'm doing. All you have to worry about is just being pretty and being comfortable. And Penny had always been happy with that. She never thought to ask any questions. So now that the crow was bringing this up, it was kind of weird to her. She was like, what are you talking about? The crow was like, let us take care of it. Do you want us to do this or not? And I want to do it anyway, regardless of what you say, because I'm curious. So Penny relented. She says, yeah, I mean, you're going to do it anyway, but yeah, let me know what happened. Cassidy and Tyre decide to go, and they went after Tumble. One of the times he left, he came back and he did the same thing he always does and left. But this time they followed him, and what they found shocked them. Except for Matthias, the crow. She wasn't shocked. She always knew that this was a possibility. Tumble had traveled many miles outside of Saxoville to a completely different part of the forest that was even more prolific than the one that he was in. There were the pink blossoms that Penny had loved so much, and they grew in abundance here. That's where he kept getting them from. When Tyre and Cassidy saw Tumbler in this beautiful forest that had all those pink blossoms, the same ones that were very valuable, that he used to bring his mate, the person who he said was the love of his life. Indeed, when they saw him, he was not alone. He was with a female, a very gorgeous female rabbit. Matthias flapped her crow wings very excitedly. I knew it! I knew he was cheating! Cassidy was excited about this, but she was also sad. Why would he have brought her all the way out here just to take another female so far away? Why would he not have brought back that female and told Penny what the deal was? Tyre felt sad for Penny and said that they should probably try to take care of her. When they went back and told Penny the news, she was so very sad. Not just sad because he had taken another mate, but because she had moved away from her family and because he wasn't taking care of her or the child anymore. Wingdale had also heard all of this. He had convinced Tyre and Matthias to take him to his father. Even though they said it was a bad idea to confront him there, he wanted to do it. When they went back to the area, Tumble saw his son bounding towards him through the petals and was completely shocked, like a deer stuck in the headlights. What are you doing here, son? He asked. So you abandoned your family so that you could have another family? He confronted his father. Tumble didn't really know what to say, but before he could say anything, Wingdale narrowed his eyes and basically said, look, you're no longer my father. You've proved that much, and you made it clear you don't want to be my dad. I don't ever want to see you again. Stay away from me and stay away from my mom. Wingdale, that's my den, he would say. But Wingdale ignored him. He's like, well, you can come back and take it. The female rabbit was just confused, and she's like, you had another female? Said it's not a problem. He's like, is everything gonna be okay? Does she want to come and live with us? Because she came from a culture, as did Tumble some time ago, that they would take many females and mates. Penny and the other friends didn't know that she wasn't the only female. She was just the current one. Penny was still devastated, and she made the decision after Wingdale, her son, told her, Mom, we should give him back his dumb den. And she was like, well, what are we gonna do? He replied, saying it's simple. We move back in with Grandma. When Cassidy overheard this, she encouraged her sister and was very excited. She says, I'm really sorry this happened, you know, and Penny said, I always knew that Tumble was bad news. I just thought I was different and that maybe it was changed with me. Tyre said he would take them back home to get their things. But Penny said, no, I'm not taking anything he gave me. I'm going back just the way I am. I don't want him to think that I owe him anything. Matthias clapped her wings together and was like, yes. And they all took off. Tyre showed them the path, and by now, Cassidy was very confident to go. So he said, I'm just going to go a little bit off the path. I can still see you guys. You can still see me. Just keep walking. I'm just going to scavenge a few things. As Penny and Cassidy were walking together, they kind of groomed each other as they were walking, and they saw something. It were the four male rabbits before that tried to hurt Cassidy. They came bounding up to them, and Wingdale was very brave. He's kind of like his father. He's kind of scrappy, and at first they thought that Wingdale was Tumble, and they're like, wait a minute. Oh, it's your Tumble's son. And he's like, yeah, where do you think you're going? And they're like, look, because of Tumble, we're gonna respect that. You know, we're gonna just pretend that never happened and move aside. We want to talk to your mom. But Wingdale wouldn't move aside, and the four rabbits started beating on him and biting him. Their teeth were so sharp that they were just cutting through his soft young skin. Penny, of course, jumped in the way to try and protect her son, and one of the rabbits grabbed her from behind, basically placing his forepaws over her hips so that he could take advantage of her. Cassidy jumped in the way and started fighting them, and Matthias did as well. She heard the commotion and came back and told Tyre what was happening. The male rabbit had grabbed on to Penny and had his way with her, and as much as Cassidy was trying to fight him and Matthias was also diving on them, the other three rabbits were too strong, and there was just too much chaos for them to do anything about it. Penny screamed in disgust and in agony as the rabbit forced himself violently inside of her. He reached for Cassidy and had her in position as well until a great mass pushed him into the air and he went tumbling head over heel. It was Tyre who was freaking livid. He yelled at the top of his lungs and swished his striped tail around. He lowered his head and bared his teeth. His ears pasted to the back of his head. This surprised Cassidy because from this vantage point, he looked a bit like those big beasts that the humans had. Tyre hissed, "Dare put your hands on her?" But the rabbit wasn't one to back down from a fight. As the other rabbits were trying to assault the other females, Tyre quickly dispatched of them and they all descended on him to get rid of the bigger threat. The big rabbit that had violated Penny was the last one standing, and he really put up a fight. He bit a chunk out of Tyre's neck, and Tyre was really hurt, but he used his jaws to wrap them around the rabbit's head and had him like this for a few times as Cassidy was worried about him, seeing how the fight was unfolding. She really thought that at first Tyre was going to win, but as the rabbit proved to be a worthy fighter, with how aggressive that he was and how combative and pugnacious he was and brawny, she really thought that this evil rabbit was going to win. The other rabbits were limping, but they weren't a problem. They weren't going to be an issue. They were definitely hurt, but so was Tyre, and this rabbit kept on running circles around him and biting. Tyre was getting wary. Something rose up in Cassidy. Her eyes narrowed and her ears pasted back, and she drove her claws into the grass and charged at this rabbit. He quickly kicked her away, but she kept on coming back. She loved Tyre with everything she had, and she was not going to stand there and watch him get hurt. The both of them fought this rabbit together. Penny saw this happening and she jumped in as well, also angry that he had taken advantage of her. Her son Wingdale also jumped in, and with all of them fighting off the main rabbit, along with Matthias, who was pecking him, he ran off. Matthias still on his tail, pecking him and clawing out his eyes. At one point before he reached the tree line, she got a good peck in, and her beak satisfyingly slid all the way in his eye socket and punctured his eye. When she flew back to the group, she dropped the little pearly object into the grass, and when Cassidy looked down at it, it was the eye of that rabbit. Wingdale just looked at it and sniffed it and looked up at her and was like, awesome. They all made their way back to Tuberville, and surprisingly, when they went back, there was actually a higher population of rabbits. Of course, it wasn't as heavily trafficked as it once used to be, but it definitely wasn't a ghost town like when they had last been there. A lot of the rabbits that they knew had come back, and they had kids, and their kids had moved out. Justin was so happy to see his sisters again. He ran and he hugged Penny, he hugged Cassidy, and he hugged his new nephew. The mother also was very happy to see them. She was also a member of the board of Tuberville, and they made different rules and regulations so that they would never run out of resources again. They also had certain people that would take certain routes to other parts of the forest to bring in a certain amount of resources. They just had to maintain better, but they were able to stay in Tuberville, and once again, the economy was booming. And so because it was booming, a lot of people moved back in. Justin was telling his sisters all about this. He's like, look, people are happy. They're excited to come back and get to work. It's not like it was before. We actually have a trading system now with the people over in Voxville. It's really, really cool. You guys can live here and not have to worry about wanting anything or depending on anyone ever again. Like Tumble, you can actually, the females can actually have their own little market here where they sell some of the stuff that comes in. Like you like to make your little trinkets and bury them. You can actually make little things and sell them back to these towns as well for a discount. Tyre was hearing all of this, and of course, a lot of the rabbits that moved in still didn't like raccoons, and they were looking at him funny, and of course they were kind of worried because they're like, okay, is he gonna eat our babies? Is that crow gonna eat our babies? Matthias had to wait on the outside of town, but she was fine with that because she was like, you know what, there's a lot of waste that they throw outside of Tuberville, so I'll just engorge myself. I don't have a problem. Crows have very thick skin. We don't get offended very easily is what she said, so she's like, listen, you little four-legged critters do your thing. I'm fine out here by myself anyway. Being around so many four-legged animals in one spot just kind of makes me nervous regardless. Cassidy was happy. And even though all the rabbits were staring at her and staring at Tyre, she kissed him in front of all of them. And a lot of the rabbits that were passing by audibly gasped at this. One of them fell over when they were pushing something into their den, and Tyre was blushing. The mother was the one that was most surprised about this, and all she said to them was, please don't do that in public. Don't embarrass me. Justin was excited to show Penny and Cassidy what was going on, but Penny was still, even though she was happy to see her mother, she was very sad, and she locked herself in her quarters where she used to be, where she grew up, and just cried. Her mom would come and comfort her and apologize at what happened, and that Tumble should be ashamed of himself. He was supposed to protect you and his son. As time would go by, Penny gave birth to a beautiful daughter, and she never felt any way about her daughter. She always felt like, look, this was an awful thing that happened to me, but I had a beautiful child out of it. As Wingdale got older, he would protect his sister, and he was hyper aware of other males around her. He was as scrappy as his father was, and he and his sister were surprisingly close with each other. After a while, since other rabbits were still very prejudiced of Tyre, he never felt completely comfortable, but there were a lot of rabbits that warmed up to him, and actually there were some that moved from out of town that said they actually had a decent relationship with raccoons outside of Tuberville, and that at some point they would come around. Justin actually worked with Tyre. They had a little business together where they would do trading outside of Tuberville, and as they were outside preparing to leave, something that they did not expect happened. In strolled a familiar face, Tumble. He was much older, but there he was, clear as day, coming in all sorted, and when Cassidy and her family saw him, they all just froze and looked at him. Wingdale certainly was angry to see him. His little sister had no idea what was going on, and when Penny saw him, she had nothing to say, but she wasn't angry at him anymore. Cassidy tried to tell him, look, we don't want you here, but Penny said it was okay. Tumble came back with his ears pasted to the back of his head, and he was just saying how sorry he was, how awful he was as a father as he looked at Wingdale, and how proud he was of how big Wingdale grew. He's like, look at your muscles, dude. You look amazing. Wingdale did not miss a beat. He was like, I don't give a damn what you think. Tumble looked at Penny and he said, look, Penny, I was wrong and I should not have done that to you. I was young and stupid and I'm so sorry. And I didn't come back right away after I realized what I did because I knew that you would want to talk to me. I figured that some time went by, maybe you'd get over it. But Penny said, you know what? I forgive you. You are the father of our firstborn son. So, you know, I have a little girl now. And he was like, you have a little girl? And she's like, no, it's not yours, obviously. And so Tumble was just beside himself. Like, even though they hadn't been together for a while, he was like, whose is it? And she's like, if you must know, it's your friend's. Yeah, the big black rabbit who was the leader of your little group, he attacked us and he did this to me. I'm angry about it, but I love my daughter and I would not take that back for the world. So when Tumble heard this, he could not believe it, but everyone else backed up what happened. Tyre was so angry and he said, you left your family defenseless, and those rabbits that you called friends didn't even respect you enough to keep their hands off your female. You're not welcome here. Justin told him that he can stay around town, but he's to come nowhere near his family. The mother was so proud of her children and told them that they did what she didn't have the heart to do with their father. Tumble kept on coming around for a few days after that, wondering if they could ever work it out, but Penny said, no, we can never work it out. If you want to try and save the relationship with something, do that with your son. But it was too far gone, and Wingdale no longer had respect for his father. After all, he wasn't in his life for most of his life. Tumble regretted this, but eventually in the town, as an older rabbit, he would find some female to settle down with, and he would have a few more offspring in the town. And those kids that grew up, Wingdale and his little sister would recognize them and have a relationship with them. Matthias would tell the rabbits, or at least those on the board, about the human action and where would be the safe routes for them to take to carry back food, how long they should hibernate, or when to hide from the humans and where. But for the most part, Tuberville, for many, many years after, would remain peaceful. It would remain untouched. Many rabbits from all over would visit there and settle down, bring their trade, become wealthy and stable, and build their families there, before sometimes moving off again into distant lands. But as for Cassidy and her family, and the rest of her generational line, they would stay in Tuberville and hold down the fort as her mother did. The end.